welcome to our program. This is the fourth or third installment of the Computer Science Education Week series. Sorry about that. Keeping Connected Kids Safe. I'm Chris.
Hi there, my name is Tanisha.
And welcome again to the Computer Science Education Week series. Tonight's topic is Keeping Connected Kids Safe. And we're excited. We're excited to have you here. And Tanisha's got a great presentation for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to her. And I'll turn my camera and microphone off and we'll get started. Hi, Tanisha.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our third installment of Computer Science Education Week, Keeping Connected Kids Safe. So this one is going to be a little bit different than perhaps the past two that you saw me do earlier this week. So we coded a dance party, which was really fun, but we're going to get just a little bit more serious here today with how to keep our kids safe as they navigate using the internet, especially nowadays with internet usage being essentially mandatory with home, at-home learning, getting access to resources, even connecting to our library. Just almost everything that you do requires the internet. So with that being now the case, we wanted to just remind parents and caregivers, because this program isn't only for parents, it's for anybody who is regularly in with kids. So somebody who works with kids, or you babysit, or even if you have a niece or nephew, or your friends all have kids, this is something that's valuable for anyone that comes in contact with kids on a regular basis. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to go ahead and kill my camera. So Computer Science Education Week is sponsored by code.org. We're going to go into more detail about the wonderful resource that is code.org tomorrow in our coding resources for kids, Coding Stuff Youth Edition. So if you'd like to learn more about the offerings of code.org, come join us tomorrow, same time, same place. And we got a lot to cover, so I'm going to dive right in. So Pew Research did a really awesome study with internet use in children. And before I forget, there are two handouts available in the handout section of your control panel where I have a link to all the resources that I used, and some of the resources that I used, including this research study and some other great tips and tricks on how to keep connected kids safe. So if you want to download those, they're extremely valuable. I highly recommend that you do. Again, those are available in the handouts section. So two parts of the study that I thought were really interesting is the engagement with certain types of devices. So this was very informative to me. I would have never, I mean, it kind of makes sense, but for instance, I would have never thought that kids, from birth to 2 years old, 74% of kids, according to the study, now this is a sample size, so not everybody, but 74% of kids come in contact with television by 2 years old. That's crazy to me. So it just has it was just really interesting to see like how many kids based on age group are coming into contact with digital devices. So this program is geared towards school age kids, K through 5. So if you look at that 5 through 8 and that 9 through 11 on the bottom here, you can see that the vast majority of children are coming into contact with some type of device. It looks like the majority of them being TV or a tablet. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you see the study with parents that are concerned about how much screen time their kids are getting. So 71% of parents are concerned, but the hopeful news is that 84% are confident that they know how much screen time is appropriate for their child. Something else I thought that was very interesting is that a lot of parents have reached out to their doctors or other medical professionals to find out how much screen time is appropriate. So some promising news that people are trying to seek answers and resources on how to manage their kids' screen time. So let's talk about the foundations of internet safety. So the library offers an internet safety course for all children, one specifically for K through 5, and then one for teens as well. So the offering that we have for K through 5, we call it Internet Safety Superhero School. And the link is going to be, we're going to put the link in the chat, and the link is also going to be included in that handout that I have for you. So again, download that handout, has a bunch of handy stuff. So there are 4 basic tenets that we teach the children in the Internet Safety Superhero School. So first one being, if you see something sad, scary, or uncomfortable, close the tab and tell an adult. Keep your secrets safe. I mean, basically making sure that you're not sharing anything inappropriate or anything too personal or private. Be wary of strangers that approach you on the internet, and be kind online. So this is a definite departure from when I was growing up and I was learning about internet and computer safety. I mean, when I was a kid, we didn't get a computer until I was like in late elementary school, early middle school. I'm in my mid 30s, so I grew up. I remember the time, when you had to use a payphone, all the way to me going to college with a laptop and Wi-Fi. So I grew up in a wide berth of time with, as far as computers and the internet. So when I was coming up, the big thing was on how to use the internet, and now this is how you keep yourself safe on the internet. So those are the 4 things that we are telling kids as part of our internet safety superhero school. So I say that as a foundation so you understand how, the library approaches internet safety as we dive into some more of our content. So this is a really important one. And I want to emphasize that caregiver part because of course we know, and my first one is kind of a captain obvious. My first point is that kids model the behavior of their parents and caregivers. I'm sure as a parent or caregiver, you already know that. But I definitely want to hammer in home the importance of not only parents understanding, the basics of internet safety and the basics of, keeping kids safe, but the caregivers as well. Because, it could be that there's a grandparent taking care of the kid during the day or doing the at-home learning, or it could be a friend, or it could be a baby or sitter, a nanny. So all of these things are important for anybody who comes in contact with children. So of course, the big obvious one, kids model the behavior of their parents and caregivers as far as when it comes to online and screen behavior. So what we are doing as parents, as caregivers, as grown-ups definitely has an effect on the kids in our life. So if you're constantly looking down on your phone, how is that coming across to the kids in your life? Like what's more, why are they always looking at their phone? Why are they always texting, et cetera, et cetera? Carefully consider what you share on social media. This is a big one that I have seen a lot of. So as a parent or a caregiver, it is really important to be careful about what you're sharing, especially about the children in your life. So one example that I came across was one of my social media friends had that little super cute picture of her daughter's first day of kindergarten where she had her daughter's name, the date, the school she was going to, and her teacher's name. Super cute, but I also noticed that she had 5,000 friends on this particular platform. Do you necessarily want 5,000 people to now know where your child's name, where they go to school, and who their teacher is? So something to think about as you are posting things on your social media channels. And of course, another kind of obvious one, how you interact with the internet and your electronic devices. Make sure that you are, practicing the tenets of internet safety. Make sure that you are being kind online. So if you as a caregiver or parent are engaged in a Twitter fight with somebody, that's probably not going to come across the best way to a child. So just make sure that you are watching your own habits and how you're interacting, how you get your information. That's a big one. Make sure that you're using credible sources, you're posting carefully, you're carefully considering what you're posting and sharing. Make sure that your habits will mirror what the children in your life are doing. And this last one is a big one, especially for maybe older caregivers or older people that are taking care of children. Ignorance or an aversion to technology is not an excuse for internet safety. Something else that I've heard a lot, especially with grandparents taking care of their grandchildren, is, oh, I don't know anything about that internet stuff. It is really important for anybody who comes in contact with children to be aware of what's out there. Like if the kid in your life likes to play Fortnite and you take care of them on a regular basis, you should know what Fortnite is. Like if make sure that you know what the kids in your life are involved in. Make sure you know what they're doing online. So That may mean you need to brush up on your technology. Maybe we have a coding resources for grown-ups class, or we'll just talk about some computer stuff. Maybe that means you need to, find maybe a quick online course so you know what's going on. But it is very important to know these. So a few tips on keeping connected kids safe. So I divided this part into two parts. So the left-hand side is going to be, with the kids, and then the right-hand side is going to be what you can do as a parent or caregiver. So on the left-hand side, start discussing internet safety early and often. So it basically begins, as you notice from that study that I showed at the beginning of the program, that study is showing that kids are coming into contact with technology before they can even speak. So that then means that as parents and caregivers, we need to start having the conversation about internet safety ASAP. So that means that needs to go ahead and start. And of course, it needs to be age appropriate. And I do have a resource in the handouts that can help with deciding, with determining what's appropriate and what's not. So that conversation needs to happen early, and it needs to be a continuous conversation because, of course, as kids get older, the expectations change. And speaking of expectations, it is also important to set expectations for screen time and internet use. So make sure that your kids are aware, like they only have X amount of time to be on a device, or they only have X amount of time to use the internet, or these are sites that are appropriate to use, and these are sites that aren't appropriate to use. Emphasizing the importance of privacy and data safety. This is really important, especially with kids. Their young minds may not understand how harmful it can be if private information makes it out onto the interwebs. They may not understand that, sharing your location is really dangerous. Not even your location, but your data. Because again, a lot of these companies, we don't know what they're doing with our personal data. So just make sure that they understand the implications of privacy and data safety. This is another huge important one, stress the importance of being kind online. This is one of the major ways of combating cyberbullying. So make sure they understand that they need to be nice, and it's not the right thing to be mean to somebody online. We all know that it's easier to be mean online because you're not directly in front of that person. It's a lot easier to send a mean tweet or to send a mean message where you're not directly in front of somebody. So it's important to make sure that kids know that behavior is inappropriate. And this is something that we encourage throughout the whole internet safety course that we have for children, is if they come in contact with something inappropriate, they need to reach out to a trusted adult or their parent. So that's another thing to emphasize. Even if even if it's not you as a parent or you as a caregiver, just say anybody else you trust, make sure that you tell someone. That is something that we stress throughout the entire, not only with, seeing something bad, sad, or uncomfortable. This is what we stress throughout the entire internet safety course that we have for kids, the importance of telling an adult if they come across something inappropriate. So as far as what parents can do, and I have, as you notice on the bottom of that block, I have some asterisks because there's a couple of things that I want to discuss about the parental controls. So there are parental controls out there that exist. So you have browser plugins that block inappropriate content. There's kid-friendly search engines, screen time limiting software, content blockers, and monitoring tools. We are going to talk about them on the next slide because there's a lot of things that need to be considered before you consider using any of those, but they are out there. So as a parent or a caregiver, if that's something that you're interested in, there are definitely things out there that exist to help keep kids safe as they are maybe researching for a project or doing stuff online. And we're going to do some more of the Captain Obvious ones as far as internet safety. Of course, as a parent or a caregiver, you should be supervising all online activities. I mean, this is a no-brainer for most parents and caregivers out there, but I just like to put that out there in case there's somebody who is watching this who may not, who is new to coming in contact with kids. But all internet online activities should be supervised. They should know, as a caregiver or parent, you should know everything your kid's doing online. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but definitely familiarize yourself with apps and websites that your child is using. So a great example I have of this is I have one friend her daughter loves to play Fortnite. And when her daughter first got into Fortnite, she's like, I have no idea what this is. Like, what can she possibly be doing? She had no idea what Fortnite is. And Fortnite is a multiplayer game, internet connected game, where you are able to talk and see other people while you're playing the game. And that's what really freaked her out, because with her having a child that's younger, she didn't want anybody to have access to her kid. So that was a perfect example of her. She set up her own account. She figured out how it works so she could then go back to her daughter and say, okay, this is what you are allowed to do in Fortnite. This is not what you're allowed to do in Fortnite. So it is really important for you to familiarize yourself with what your kids are doing, because again, her daughter loves Fortnite and she's glad that she has the ability to play it and interact with her friends in a way that's appropriate for her age. But part of that was her knowing how it worked. So just familiarize yourself with what your kids are, as a caregiver, what the kids in your life are using. And you're going to probably get sick of me saying this, but talking to the kids in your life, keep the conversation going. So just make sure the conversation about online and internet safety is constantly going. Again, as kids get older, things need to shift, things need to change. And you also want to keep that line of communication open, so if something inappropriate is happening, then they know to reach out to you. So, about those monitoring apps and plugins. One of the biggest questions that we get whenever there is a class that I do like this, where we're talking about any type of apps and plugins, are which ones work? Which one should I use? Which one should I download? On purpose, I am not suggesting any monitoring app or plugin, and here is why. So the first reason being is that it's something that should be carefully considered, and plenty of research should go into these apps or these plugins before you use them. So one thing that I noticed when I was researching for this program is that not all companies are honest. So some of them, and a lot of these apps are paid. So keep in mind that a lot of these apps you have to pay for. So some of these companies are not honest, and they're using some very questionable tactics in order to get parents and caregivers to download their apps. So essentially they want your money. So some of them will, and not only scare tactics, unrealistic expectations, like guaranteed to block anything inappropriate from coming through, which comes down to my next point. It is impossible to block all inappropriate content. It is just virtually, you can't do it. There is no app out there that can guarantee that every bad thing ever will be blocked. It's just not possible. And that's where you're going to get sick of me saying this. That's where that open dialogue with the kids in your life comes in very handy, because if you have that dialogue going, then the kids in your life are going to be very comfortable with going. You're going to hopefully be comfortable coming to you when they come across something inappropriate. This is also a big one, and I mentioned that data safety earlier. Think about what you are giving up when you install monitoring software. So many of those monitoring apps are the ones that monitor like who they're talking to, their browsing history, all of that. They need permission to access contacts on your device, your location services, so where your child is, and all of the browsing history that happens on that device. So think about it as a shared device. If that's a device that you use, that means that all of the things that happen on that app are now accessible to that company. And of course, once that data is out there, you have no idea how it's being used. And not only is that data out there, that's data now out there on your child. So that is something that you definitely need to be very carefully consider if you are thinking about installing any of these things. Like, again, I'm definitely not saying that you should never install anything, but a lot of careful consideration and research needs to be done before you consider using any of that. Monitoring software doesn't work in a vacuum. So let's say, for instance, that a child in your life does come across something inappropriate, or you get the alert from the company or whatever app that you're using. If you get a little notification saying, Johnny tried to access XYZ, well, now you still have to have that conversation with Johnny about what he accessed. So then again, that open line of communication, you still have to talk to your kids or the kids in your life about why this is inappropriate, how they got to it. Because a lot of times, talking with professionals and kids in my life and people who have kids in my life, a lot of the inappropriate stuff is come across very innocently. So they're doing a search for something very innocent, and then something inappropriate may pop up. And of course, the most effective tool in internet safety is having an ongoing dialogue with your child. So that is proven by far to be the most effective thing that can be done to make sure that kids are doing the right thing online. So again, we are not suggesting that you not use these apps, because a lot of them are very helpful. So especially with the safe, like, safe search on Google or any of your on your search engine, just enabling it so that certain things are filtered. That's a lot of them are pretty harmless, but there are some in there where you really have to carefully consider whether or not you want to use them. So as part of the handout that I have, I also have included a link to a guide to parental controls. So that is in the handout. So if you do want to do some more research on what's out there, I have included that in the handout. So there is definitely some more information out there about how to use these apps effectively, how to find the right apps for your child, because it also depends on their age. Something that could be for a 5-year-old is going to look way different than, a 12-year-old. All right, so kind of went through that pretty quickly. So a couple of final thoughts and helpful resources. Of course, the most effective thing that you can do as a parent or a caregiver of someone who regularly comes in contact with kids is to keep talking. So out of all the research that I've done, and not only did I do like research with studies or do, with government agencies or child advocacy agencies, I asked a lot my own parents. I asked, parents on staff at the library. I asked my friends who are parents. I asked a whole bunch of people just to get an idea of what they do for internet safety. And the one thread that went through all of it was talking to your kids, or talking to the kids in your life. That's the best way of emphasizing the importance of keeping kids safe online, is to make sure that there's an open line of dialogue, because the biggest thing is if they do come across something inappropriate, you want to make sure that they feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, I was searching for this thing and then this popped up, and then you can start that conversation. Or somebody is bullying me online, they're sending mean messages, and then you can take care of it. So the 4 resources that I thought were very informative and helpful is I have linked to that Pew Research Study that I showed earlier in the presentation. And the part that I showed was really, really small. That was a small snippet of it. I think it went on for like 10 pages. So I highly recommend that you take a look at it, because it has some really interesting facts and findings about how kids are using the internet and what parents think about it. I also mentioned earlier that guide to parental controls. And this slide is available as a handout, and it's hyperlinked. So if you download it, you'll be able to click through right to the resources. So that guide to parental controls, that's something else that is extremely helpful. So if you are considering using parental controls, if you think that that's something that'll be useful, then definitely take a look at that, because it has I found that it was a very comprehensive way of gauging whether or not a certain app or a certain plugin would be appropriate. I have also linked to our HCPLC internet safety training. So again, this is the training that we actually require, and I didn't mention that earlier, but this is the training that we require for all of the children who come into the library who want to use our computers. So any kid comes into the library and wants to use an internet computer at all of our libraries, they have got to complete this first before they are allowed to use our computers. So this is a really good one. It's great for kids, and that's for K through 5. We also offer one for older kids as well. And FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has a really awesome resource on, they call it FTC Kids Online, but it's another amazing resource for internet safety for kids. And I've also included in the handout section the handout for that. So now, if there are any questions, I will definitely take them. I'm going to jump back on, Chris, if you want to jump back on with me so we can see if there are any questions.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Tanisha. Yeah, we have a few questions here. I'll invite, again, one of the attendees that you can submit questions in the questions section. So this is the time to do that. One person was curious, I know you mentioned the browser plugin earlier. They're just wondering a little bit more about them. They weren't aware of what they exactly were and what they do. Is there a brief kind of explanation about what a browser plugin is and what it does?
So a browser plugin is essentially a mini application that's used on your web browser. So for example, if you have Google Chrome, it's something that connects to your browser to basically assist you on any web function. I'm trying to think of, so for example, on my personal web browser, I have something called Grammarly. Grammarly is something that essentially just checks my grammar. If I'm typing something out, it checks my grammar and it'll send a ping up a little message that then like, hey, that's not right. So that's an example of a browser plugin. So in regards to what we're talking about today, a browser plugin, for instance, in the realm of internet safety would be something that you could put on your browser that would filter searches. So like if your kid was searching for something and they accidentally, put in something that might come up with inappropriate things, it would filter them out. So that's what a browser plugin is.
All right. Someone is asking about implementing parental controls, I believe on they've said their router, their internet router. Are you familiar with that? Have you heard anything about that?
That, to be 100% honest, is something I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
If that is a possibility, you may want to reach out to your internet provider and see if that's something that they can do. Because I know especially with things that go with particular devices or particular routers, that's something that is controlled by your internet company or your device or your browser. So I would reach out to them or just do like a quick Google search to see if that's something that is possible. That is something I am unfortunately not very familiar with.
Yeah, kind of along the lines of what you're saying. Yeah, there must be maybe a way to set it up to where specific devices aren't able to connect to certain Wi-Fi networks, like different ones. All right, so let's see. We've got a few more questions here. Someone wants to know, in your research, have you run across any age recommendations for social media and cell phones? Did you see anything mentioned about what a good age is for that?
No. The easy answer to that is no. That was all over the place. So when I asked my friends and other people I know who were parents, it was also all over the place. I had some who were like, my kid's not getting a phone until they drive a car. I had some that were like, oh, my 5-year-old has a phone. So that is a hard no. Now, as far as the social media channels go, that is a huge big fat it depends. I know that a lot of the major ones have an age requirement, and I believe the average age requirement is 13. So they have an age requirement. But there's also newer ones that are coming out every day that are geared towards children. So that is something, again, and talking with everybody, because not only did I do like computer research, or like I also kind of polled all of my people in my friends and family to see what they thought. And that was another one that was just all over the board, where I had some with teenagers who said my teenager doesn't have social media, and then some where their 13-year-old has an Instagram. So that's another one that there was just no conclusive or definitive. I just couldn't find it because it was just really all over the place.
Right, that makes sense. All right, we just have one last question here. Someone wants to know if there's a recommended browser or email service that is the safest or the most recommended as far as its reputation for safety and privacy.
No, that's another one where, so something to keep in mind as you are researching is a lot of and I'm trying to find a good way to put this, a lot of these big companies are businesses.
Right. So
with that in mind, their goal is to maximize their revenue. So as you are figuring out what works best for your kids and what works best for your family, that is definitely something that you would want to keep in mind. I have not come across any that were safer than others. I will say that a lot of the major ones do have controls built into them. So I mentioned earlier Google with Safe Search. Unfortunately, that is not something I can demo on my computer because I'm using a work laptop and they've already locked so many things down that I can't even get access to that. But so that's an example. Again, I am not saying that that's safer than anybody else, but I'm just using that as an example. my recommendation, again, from what I know and talking with other parents, is to kind of use an assortment of things to make it the safest. And another thing that you may want to keep in mind is you having access to it. So with a lot of my friends and family that have children, is they have access to all of their kids' stuff. They have access to their email, they have access to their social media, they have access to everything.
Mhm.
And that seems, talking with everybody, the most effective way to make sure that your kids aren't coming across anything safe. So unfortunately, I wish I could have a better answer than that if this one is the safest, but again, and that's why with that previous slide I had about the browser plugins, it was virtually impossible to come up. And even with the research that I done, with the other research that I done, they even said, like with that parental control ones, is well, there's no like this is the safest thing. And again, going back to those companies that talk, that those ones, the monitoring software, again, it's a business. Their business is, it's a business. So something to keep in mind when you're trying to find that out, to figure out what's best for your family.
All right. Well, that is it for questions. I will point out that in the chat section, if you want, there's a link to tomorrow's fourth installment of Computer Science Education Week. You can click on that link and register. It'll be, like Tanisha said, same place, same time. So if you want, you can register there. Now, if you want to contact the library, the information is here on the screen. You can go online at hcplc.org/contact. Also, to see what upcoming programs we have, you can go to our events calendar at hcplc.org/events. And of course, there is that internet safety link again that Tanisha has provided. So with that, thank you very much, Tanisha. Thank you very much, everyone who joined us. And I hope everyone has a great, safe evening. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.